always a good idea. It's almost better if you wait a bit before you eat it. I'm going to take this beef stew one step further and turn it into a yummy shepherd's pie topped with mashed potatoes. It's pretty much a dream for my family when I make this. They love it so much. I've been browning the meat for the beef stew. I used chuck roast and I cut it into chunks. I got the heat really high under the pot so I could get a nice brown color. I'm taking it out of the pot just for a few minutes. I'm going to throw some onions in. And this heat was so high and that meat got so brown that there are so many flavorful bits in the bottom of this pan. That's exactly what I want. Crank up the heat a little more. And then I'll stir the onions and just cook them for a couple of minutes to get them going. They're getting coated in all those little bits of flavor. Beef stew is definitely one of those comfort foods for me. It just is so rich and hearty. I think anything that takes 2 or 3 hours to cook is always going to turn out great. Okay, the onions are really starting to go. I want to throw some garlic in here, so I'm going to mince up 3 cloves. I really love days like this when I can get dinner going early in the day. There's something about cooking dinner late in the day. I'm much more of a morning person. My energy starts to wane as the day goes on. So getting it all cooked up early and being able to just pull it out of the fridge and warm it up for dinner makes me so happy. Okay, the garlic's all minced up. So I'll get it into the pot with the onions. Ooh, things are smelling good in this kitchen. I'll just stir it so the garlic starts to cook. Now I want the stew to have a little bit of thickness, so I'll help that along by sprinkling a couple of tablespoons of flour right over the onions. The stew gets a little bit thick anyway as it cooks, but the flour really helps that along, and the liquid's just going to be thick and rich. I'm actually kind of hungry right now. I better stop talking about how good this stew is. So now for the liquid. A lot of times when I make beef stew, I use red wine for the liquid, but this time I'm going to add some beer. Good old beer. It's not pretentious at all. It has a nice mild flavor, and I love using it with stew. Okay, that liquid is already thickening up. Gosh, it smells good. I've also got some beef broth because I want this stew to be really savory. I'll just add probably 2 cups or so. You can use your own beef stock that you have simmered slowly over time, but I use way too much to use my own, so I've always got cartons in my pantry. I'll splash in a little bit of water, and whenever I make beef stew, tomato paste is always on the ingredient list. It's not really a tomatoey broth. The paste just gives this extra flavor and makes it nice and rich. The color's really beautiful. Shepherd's pie is one of those comfort foods that is also great for entertaining because it's just so darn gorgeous and delicious. You can serve a big old shepherd's pie in one pan, or you can do individual ramekins. You can do small iron skillets if you're having guests. It's so versatile. You just pick the vessel and it works. So I've got a few more things to add. A few dashes of Worcestershire sauce just to make sure it's extra savory. And plenty of salt and pepper. Ooh, that pot's starting to boil. And in the spice realm, I like to add paprika. A couple of teaspoons or so. It just adds a hint of a flavor and of course contributes to the beautiful color of the stew. And then I like to add just a little bit of sugar. It's kind of an unusual ingredient, but with the tomato paste, the sugar kind of counteracts the acid. It just adds to the richness of the sauce. So now the beef goes back in. You know, you can make an enormous pot of this stew and then divvy it up into smaller quantities and freeze it. I've done that from time to time. This stew is a great slow cooker recipe too. Just put it on low for about 8 hours or so. It turns out glorious. The great thing about stew is you can individualize it and add whatever you want. You can add wedges of red potatoes, carrots, different veggies. I decided to keep the veggies out of the stew, and I'm going to serve them on the side with the shepherd's pie. It's going to be really good. I'm hungry. All right, the lid goes on the pot. I'm going to turn the heat down, and it just needs to simmer for a couple of hours. Meat and potatoes is a way of life around here. So shepherd's pie is really the best of both worlds. It's got both the meat and the potatoes in the same dish. I'm going to make the mashed potatoes. I've been boiling some peeled potatoes. They're nice and soft. And they go right back into the pot. And I'm going to do a twist on my regular mashed potato recipe. I'm very, very excited about it. Now when I mash potatoes, I turn the heat on under the pot.